Hey guys, welcome to the second episode of the Statist podcast. I'm Julian,
And I'm Cameron.
and today we'll be having on a good friend of ours, Kyle Kalinak. But before we begin, we'd love it if you guys could like the video and subscribe to our channel, and we hope you enjoy the episode. Okay, so starting out, at last Thursday's Democratic debate, I saw a sort of dividing line, in my opinion, between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton when it comes to, I guess, principles on foreign policy. Then I saw this manifest in two different ways, and I wanted to kind of highlight on the first way I saw that, and that deals with Bernie Sanders' comments on Henry Kissinger. So I'm going to quote him directly here from the debate. "I am proud to say that Henry Kissinger is not my friend. I will not take advice from Henry Kissinger. And in fact, Kissinger's actions in Cambodia when the United States bombed that country, overthrew Prince Sihanouk, created the instability for Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge to come in, who then butchered some 3 million innocent people, one of the worst genocides in the history of the world. So count me in as somebody who will not be listening to Henry Kissinger." Which, afterward, there was a sort of a back and forth between him and Hillary, and Hillary pretty much justified her relationship with Kissinger by pointing out the fact that even any president would have to come to terms with the disagreements that a influential person like Kissinger has with themselves, and mainly for pragmatic purposes of taking advantage of Kissinger's relations with countries like China. And I think that would be a completely reasonable statement to make. However, Henry Kissinger, and at least in my opinion, and I think objectively speaking, we could say, the guy's just a bloodthirsty war criminal. Which, I mean, his rap sheet is pretty long, but I guess I'll just kind of give you a small example in what Bernie Sanders was alluding to during the debate. What he did in Cambodia. And he set up a policy of carpet bombing, and this was bombing within designated areas that we would come to find out were highly populated by civilians. Originally, what we were told why we did this was to drive out the Viet Cong, their forces and their bases. Well, at the same time, it seems, and afterwards, we've kind of come to the conclusion that it was all for strategic aligning for the U.S. And I say that because I'm referring to specifically a Vox article that I had read, and it highlights that the carpet bombing campaign killed from 150,000 to 500,000 people. And even if you want to buy into the mainstream narrative of this, you can't tell me all of those people were Viet Cong. And if you want to delve into the other narrative, it's certainly worse that Henry Kissinger set up a policy to kill innocent people just for U.S. strategic gain. I mean, I don't know what other term to use besides a war criminal whenever I'm referring to him. And there is also another example, at least to my immediate knowledge, of Pakistan. Whenever we had a dictator, Yahya Khan, who was committing genocide against millions of people, we had Henry Kissinger sell him arms directly. That there is no question that is in violation of international law and probably United States law. So it's beyond me that Hillary would take this sort of mentoring, of advisement from somebody who is just completely bloodthirsty. Your thoughts, Cameron?
I honestly don't have much to chime in on this, but I think it's safe to say that we don't want somebody in elected office who is being mentored by a war criminal. I don't think she's learned from her mistakes back in 2008. She's a war hawk.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get to those mistakes later. but also there was some other things I wanted to continue on with that
Okay.
I forgot to add in. Greg Grandin, a history professor at New York University, recently wrote an article in The Nation a few weeks ago about Henry Kissinger. And he makes an interesting case of all of the crimes that we could probably pin on Kissinger. But I wanted to quote one paragraph from his article. The full tally hasn't been done, but a back-of-the-envelope count would attribute 3, maybe 4 million deaths to Henry Kissinger's actions. But that number probably undercounts his victims in South Africa. Pull one string from the current tangle of today's multiple foreign policy crisis, and odds are that it will lead back to something Kissinger did between 1968 and 1977. Over-reliance on Saudi oil? That's Kissinger. Blowback from instrumental use of radical Islam to destabilize Soviet allies? Again, Kissinger. An unstable arms race in the Middle East? Check, Kissinger. Sunni and Shia rivalry? Yup, Kissinger. The impasse in Israel-Palestine? Kissinger. The radicalization of Iran, a quote-unquote act of folly, was how veteran diplomat George Ball described Kissinger's relationship to the Shah. Militarization of the Persian Gulf? Kissinger, Kissinger, Kissinger. So it's hard, I think, for any of us to understand the scope of all of his actions. I mean, certainly, I guess if I was even being nice to him, I would be saying he was a polarizing figure, and certainly an influential one. But the fact remains, he broke the law. We have somebody in the United States that, when it comes to foreign policy, it's okay. You could justifiably be sitting in a jail cell, but instead you're giving advisement to one of the top candidates, at the very least one of the two,
which is extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
This is very dangerous territory that we're about to tread.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things that this is one of the biggest candidates that's running for president.
She's the fucking front runner for the Democratic
Yeah,
Party, and
yeah.
everybody's like, okay, Henry Kissinger's your friend. Good, cool.
And in an Intercept article, I'll read part of that right now. It points out who also she's getting more advisement from, and it might surprise you.
It's the same from Jeb Bush, right?
No, well, it's there's probably one organization in this one. It highlights that it's the same for Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz.
Oh, okay.
But these are some of this is how it was phrased within the Intercept article. They work at places like Albright Stonebridge, the powerhouse global consulting firm led by Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, person who says
all women are going to hell.
Yes, all
vote
women
for
are
Hillary.
going to hell. Anyway, a staunch Clinton backer, of course. They work at places like Beacon Global Strategies, which is providing high-profile foreign policy guidance to Clinton, as well as to Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. And they work at places like Kissinger Associates. In fact, Bob Hormats, who was a Goldman Sachs vice chairman before serving as Clinton's undersecretary of state, is now advising Clinton's campaign, even while serving as the vice chairman of Kissinger Associates. So again, we get this idea of it is literally the establishment versus in foreign policy's case, I think humanitarian rights and all of the above. And I pointed this out again last podcast or last episode that it's the norm now to be war hawks. It's the norm to break international law. And that's scary. Of course we have a candidate who is like Bernie Sanders, who basically says, hey, I don't want to break international law. I don't want to kill innocent people. And again, I'm not saying it's clear and concise as Hillary Clinton's foreign policy, but I would much rather have the guy who has these principles set out and says, this is what I want to work with, than have somebody like Hillary Clinton who doesn't have any principles. It's the status quo of principles, and what we've seen throughout history is those principles are destructive. So, and I have some more stories later on that I could highlight and show you guys that everything she's been involved in, even as Secretary of State, is pretty problematic. But I'm going to surrender some of my time here to Cameron because I don't want to walk all over time on this podcast. So,
Okay. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but following Supreme Court Justice Scalia's death, Robert Wright came out, and he claimed that he has a mole in the White House. And he thought that Barack Obama was going to nominate Srinivasan. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it ended up being Stacey Michelle Yandel. And she is an African American, and she is also homosexual. And she still has to be approved by the Senate, of course. But I think this is really interesting. I think this is somebody we could use in the Supreme Court. What do you have to say about that?
well, it's kind of difficult for me to. I mean, clearly, I think she's going to be in favor of more liberal policies, probably, or more of a, I guess, liberal interpretation of the Constitution, which, we could talk about that. We could go into the specifics of that on a different day. However, it's hard for me to kind of base these things off of just who she is on the outside. I would have to kind of get a sense of what her positions are on X, Y, and Z. But then again, at the same time, and as much as it's completely unprecedented, I don't think Obama's going to get this to pass.
You don't think so?
No. I mean, the Republicans are very adamant that they're not going to approve anybody until this next president.
That's really going to put us back.
Oh yeah,
That's really gonna eliminate progress. We still got another 9 months until the elections.
No, I completely disagree. And there's been so many examples brought up to them that, hey, we've done this in the past. We've let presidents who are on their last year elect a Supreme Court. Whenever the seat opens, they elect them. That's just how it works in government.
But you're not telling me that, let's say Ted Cruz was president right now.
Oh yeah, no.
He wouldn't go ahead and try to nominate somebody and say, because he said he should just wait and let him figure it out.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, we can all see through the Republicans' intentions here. Just like if the Democrats are doing this, we could see past it. I just think it's, personally speaking, it's just annoying that they just can't say, we don't want any liberal, we don't want any of Obama's decisions in the Supreme Court.
Well, that's blatant in your face. That's exactly what they want. They don't. They don't want to shift. They don't want to shift the favor towards the Democrats.
Yeah.
In the Supreme Court.
Which, I mean, they've already been doing. I said it. I think I've said it to you, Cameron, a few times. These Tea Party Republicans, as it shifts more to the right, they don't understand basic government. Some of them are slimy and weaselly, like Ted Cruz, who's perfectly smart and capable, and he's just you can get a sense that he's taking advantage of the political climate. But most of these guys just don't get it. I mean, they were trying to shut down the government over Planned Parenthood, and they don't want any money going to abortions. That doesn't happen as it is with that doesn't exist except for like in the three situations of life of the mother, all of those, which I think anybody's for. Sad part is some of the nominees for the GOP aren't for it.
Yeah,
like Marco Rubio, who's close to the center by some Republican standards, and they wanted to pass that so bad to shut down the government. It's not like Obama. First of all, again, if you're trying to aim to get away money from abortion, that's not how you do it. It doesn't go to it as it is. Secondly, Obama's not going to sign that. He's not going to let that through. Third, and it's never going to happen. They didn't have the resources. They still continued to, not have the resources of going over his head. These Republicans don't understand basic government. They're literal obstructionists. And as much as sometimes I don't like the Democrats, this is just one example of the Republicans where I would much rather have a possibly, this is going to be a little controversial, I'd much rather have a corrupt Democrat who kind of understands the system than have a leader that doesn't even get how shit works. And I mean, of course, you know, I'm partially over, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get you.
But yeah.
Do you have anything you want to chime in?
I don't know. Lately, it's just the Republicans. They're all for some kind of culture that is, it's just violent, and it's just, it really does not make sense. And this they're just trying to jump all over something that's really not theirs, you know. And they don't really understand the Constitution, but they protect it with their lives, and it really just doesn't make any sense.
Oh, I mean, they claim to, and again, that's pandering. We have always sort of been a shift to the right sort of country, and they love to hide behind the Constitution, and that's perfectly fine. But yeah, in instances like this, where the power to an elected Supreme Court justice is given to the executive branch. That's the executive branch's job, and they're going to sit there and say how it is Congress's job to do the checks and balances necessary against the executive, and it's the judiciary's job to do it as well. But whenever it comes to them and letting Obama do his job, nothing.
Yeah. They just don't understand government, it seems like.
I want to back up a little bit. Okay, so we were talking about Hillary Clinton, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz all having the same mentors.
Well, not
mentors,
advisors.
but advisors,
yeah.
correct?
Yeah, foreign policy advisors.
Okay, so I kind of misconstrued things a little bit, saying that Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton had the same advisors, but I kind of got that misconstrued. According to the bipartisan report, Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton are funded by the same 17 megadonors.
Oh, okay.
And James Borinak, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, donated to both Hillary and Jeb. Susan Evans, Thomas Flexner, Robert Forsman, Kelly Golden, etc., etc. So I just wanted to make that clear. I wasn't...
Well, I mean, and you're going to have overlap there. You're certainly going to have overlap of people's interests whenever it would come to be the shaping of foreign policy for each candidate. And again, you're going to have those same interests. This has been my whole point, at least when it comes into regard to foreign policy. Hillary Clinton is not a progressive. And I love how this debate, Bernie Sanders has really created a sort of rallying behind the word progressive. I don't think I heard it during the Obama debates, whenever that was being, put out there. And she's doing the same. She's making herself seem she's the more pragmatic person. She can get stuff done. But the Democratic Party, in my opinion, if you look at the history of it, they were the party for progressivism. They were the party that was meant to push the nation into the future. And she's not a progressive when it comes to foreign policy. I mean, I can probably highlight on other things that she's not progressive on. She wants to conserve the systems, the values that we have now. That's a conservative.
See, I don't even think she wants to uphold values that we have now. It's really just upholding the values of the big pocket interest, really, the big interest values.
Well, I mean, broadly, generally speaking, that's who we've been protecting this whole time.
Yeah.
I forget who says it, but we have a safety net and socialism for the 1%, and it's ruthless capitalism for the bottom. And that's my whole point. And again, when it comes to things like healthcare, like foreign policy, where she just wants to stay and keep what we have and has no new ideas to bring to the table, you really have to question. is she progressive?
I think you were saying Ted Cruz was a little like a sneaky rat.
Yeah.
But I really think that Hillary Clinton's worse than Ted Cruz when it comes to this, because she takes the same kind of culture that Ted Cruz does with the Republicans, and she does it with the Democrats. And it's even worse when she calls herself a progressive, but has the same interests as these big companies, like Ted Cruz.
Oh no, that's absolutely. And one of, I guess, the things that I'll give the Republicans is they at least have a populist sect of their party. And right now the populist sect is actually overcoming the establishment. We don't have that in the Democratic Party. You can point to a few senators, a few congressmen here and there that are for populist, liberal, progressive values. But for the most part, I mean, they're taking billions of dollars from, like you said, the same people who are also putting money into the Republicans. Mm-hmm. I think it was, I used to listen to a lot of Jesse Ventura, but he said, it doesn't matter when it comes to that two-party system, because you have the same people betting on both candidates. So they're going to win either way. And it's true, but that's why we have Bernie this time. Doesn't run on super PACs. And I mean, I certainly thought it was going to be a crutch for him in the beginning.
Oh, absolutely.
But he's turned it into a rallying call. Mm-hmm. And again, what we were alluding to earlier with Hillary and her '08 campaign, she's making the same mistakes. Obama was the crazy liberal guy, and I've been in government longer, I'm more pragmatic. And even the sexist thing. I mean, I think it was TYT. I was watching them. They looked into it a little bit more, and she had a thing, her campaign had a thing going against Obama's, painting them as, I think it was Obama boys. It's the same thing as the Bernie bros.
Yeah.
And so she's making the same mistakes and making the same tactics. And why she thinks that it's different this time around is completely beyond me. I mean, we've seen Bernie go up in Iowa from having 7% last year, and he pretty much tied with the caucus. We see states like Nevada, where they had a 16 point gap plus, and it's come down into a dead heat there too. Bernie in some polls being 3 points away from her. Again, this is Obama all over again. But I think at the same time, it's different in the regard of Bernie has been doing this a lot longer than Obama, and whenever it comes to being trusting him, I think certainly I do trust him more than Obama. I am leery of. I'm still weary from Obama's presidency, promising all of those things just to kind of sell out on some places. But I think this is maybe the one possible time we could have somebody that, even if he doesn't get it done, he's going to fight like hell to do it. And that's enough for me.
So, moving on, since we mentioned Bernie in Iowa and New Hampshire, mm-hmm. According to PRNTLY, Bernie and Hillary are in a virtual tie in Nevada. And that's coming up next after South Carolina, correct?
Yes.
And it shows that they're in a virtual tie, with both of them carrying 45% of the vote. However, according to PRNTLY, Bernie is supposed to take the lead and win Nevada altogether. Do you think this is accurate?
I'm not familiar with the source. Are you familiar with the polling that source usually gives out? Are they usually accurate?
Not quite. I'm kind of questioning its legitimacy.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Again, in a Democratic Party debate, we've seen it before. It's not surprising. You give the you let this guy be heard, and if he's far left to where Hillary's at, it's gonna happen. I think it's possible. The one I was quoting earlier was a CNN one, so you're probably not far. That's probably not far from the truth. I mean, when leading up to Iowa, this was the same thing we saw. Sometimes Hillary having 3 points less. I think the very last poll they did before Iowa did show a virtual tie. So I mean, we just got to wait and see. But ultimately, I think the polls are looking very bright for Bernie in states like New Hampshire. I mean, sorry, not New Hampshire, Nevada. Yeah,
I can agree. Have y'all heard about the push polling?
I think you mentioned it in passing to me, but go ahead, refresh my mind.
Okay. Well, for many of you who don't know, there's this guy named Nolan Dalla, and he received a phone call by someone who claimed to be polling residents in Nevada, and he was asking people how they felt about issues and et cetera, et cetera. And the interview started with, basic questions like who are you voting for? What issues do you feel most strongly about? And whenever the question came up about Bernie Sanders, if they could change his mind, he said, no, I'm sticking with Bernie Sanders. He's my man. He's my candidate. I feel like he's the one that suits me the best. And they pretty much went on to discredit Bernie by saying that he voted against the Brady bill, his positions on foreign policy, saying it's weak, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know. How do you feel about this?
I mean, I think I was reading whenever Bernie first announced and originally that I don't think it was Hillary, but the one area where they were going to expose him was the Brady bill. I think it was Martin O'Malley that was actually trying to attack him back then on it. I mean, I'm not familiar with the push polling thing. I would imagine it probably is illegal. It's
extremely illegal.
Yeah, I'd imagine it is. But these talking points just seem rather desperate. The Brady bill one, I saw him struggling from that point as soon as it started, which I don't think he really should be. They asked him about it in the first debate. He told him why he voted in favor, or it was against, right? Or was it in favor? He voted in favor, for or against it.
The Brady bill?
Yeah.
He voted against the Brady bill.
Okay. Of why he voted against it, he basically said the one thing that was a no-go for him when he read it was it would hold small firearm sellers accountable for something that they sold to an individual. Which he said I'm all for going after the big gun companies, but for these small mom and pop owners, it shouldn't come back on them. And I completely agree. I mean, again, you're not going to get everything perfect with him. I know a lot of people who don't like his stances on Israel-Palestine, but that's just something, again, that Hillary just so happens to be in line with because, again, this is the status quo. And you're not going to get every sort of issue to be perfect with him. But again, this is the guy who's offering new ideas, something fresh, something different, and he will, in my opinion, I feel at least, he will fight like hell to get him. And I think it's, again, that, because I look pretty heavily into foreign policy, that every time I hear that he has a weak foreign policy, it makes me cringe. I mean, I've said...
But, we covered this in the last...
Yeah, I said my piece on it.
Everybody can agree that he needs more confidence.
Yeah, he needs more poise, more elaboration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. Like, with foreign policy, though, if you're super aggressive, you're going to get pushed back, Like, and that's with anything. But if you're not aggressive with foreign policy, I think that's probably the best thing. Because if you're too aggressive about everything, like Donald Trump saying he's going to make Mexico pay for a wall.
You're saying that they're going to come off as a war hawk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's just asking for more aggression when you give aggression. And I don't think you should give any aggression. And just like George Washington and all the other founding fathers, they thought that we should be self-sustainable and we don't really need foreign policy. We just need to be with ourselves. We just need to be America, and we don't need to worry about all this other stuff.
Stop being the world's police.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. I can agree with that.
Yeah, I agree overall. I my whole thing is I think that there are times to be aggressive. Not necessarily the world's police. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, I agree.
But whenever it comes to like humanitarian work with the going with the UN to fight against genocides all over the world, I'm all for that. And that's what Bernie's for as well. And again, I think it wouldn't frustrate me as much if Hillary Clinton was just aggressive. If she just fell under the term aggressive, it wouldn't mess with me, because look at the whole GOP side. Ted Cruz saying we need to carpet bomb until the sand shines. Sorry. I mean, I can deal with candidates who pretty much have small penises and want to be aggressive. I can deal with it. But the thing I can't deal with is whenever it starts to just become stupid. It starts to become really, really regressive. For instance,
it's a show.
Yeah. For instance, I was looking at an article in The Hill earlier, and it highlighted on the ISIS forces that are growing in Libya. We're seeing 2,000, 3,000 extra, I guess, forces, soldiers that are being put into the fray of Libya from ISIS. Now, if Hillary was just overall aggressive when it came to Gaddafi, again, I'd seen it before. I can look at John McCain. I can look at Lindsey Graham. They will probably do the same thing. But when it becomes to where it's stupid, it's just a stupid move. And as Bernie, there was also the second part of the debate. Bernie went off on Western imperialism, something I've definitely never heard a candidate talk about. And he highlighted on these frustrations. He highlighted on Iran, whenever we went in there and took down a democratically elected official, put in our own dictator, and what happens after that? The only people who are willing to fight against him is the theocracy, the Ayatollah. And now we have Iran, who is at least, I'll call them a theocracy. They're a theocracy to a certain extent. It's just stupid moves like that, where you're not calculating, you don't take into consideration any of the factors. All you want is to make money for the people who are backing you, and I think that's purely it. For the Republicans, it might be some sort of bravado stance, a little bit in there, and I could see that as well. But when it comes to Democrats, it's just corrupt, it's just slimy, and it's just stupid moves.
And you can't fool the Democrats with those talking points.
Yeah, you can't fool the Democrats with false bravado. But you can fool them whenever it comes to stuff like, oh, it's a humanitarian reason. Oh, these people are being killed, and I could sympathize with that. Sometimes it sucks, but there's going to be a place burning somewhere in the world.
Burning.
No, but it'll either happen that way, or again, we can do it through the UN, we can do it through the EU, whoever wants to take care of it, and we will supply them with adequate amount of forces. But again, that's what really frustrates me about Hillary. It's not being aggressive. She's just doing stupid things because her backers want it.
Yeah, she wants to vote.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with Obama. Why are we, in Afghanistan? It's all of these things that we finally have a candidate that's saying, it's kind of corny, enough is enough. And it's nice to see that he's come full circle with that. Enough is enough. Enough is enough when it comes to economics. Enough is enough when it comes to foreign policy. And it's really inspiring. It's really compelling. And again, it's more in line with the American people, what they really feel, not what CNN wants to show you, not what Fox News or MSNBC wants to show you. These are the people that have sat out election after election because they're either tired of seeing the world's police, or they're tired of starving every night. And that's what's particularly interesting about this primary. I don't know.
Do you have any other topics you want to share, Julian?
No.
No? Okay.
We could, if you want, we could just riff for a little bit.
Yeah, actually, I have a small rant that I really need to get out of my system.
I know, I feel like I've been ranting too much on this episode.
No, it's cool. It's
I hope
well needed.
I hope it's at least still a little substantive. I don't mean to just kind of go off on tangents, but...
Well, what I want to talk about is democratic socialism versus Marxist socialism.
All right.
Because through this campaign with Bernie, we've seen person after person call him a communist, or he's going to tax us at 90%, and oh my god, he loves Che Guevara's dick. He honeymooned in the USSR.
He helped the Sandistas.
But let's elaborate, because it seems as if people in America really need a fucking wake-up call. A democratic socialist is not a Marxist, nor a communist. It's not even close to actual socialism. A democratic socialist is still a capitalist. He's still a capitalist who believes that we should restrain the self-destructive excess of capitalism. We believe that the economy and society should be run democratically. We believe that human needs trump greed and exceeds the money-hungry billionaire's selfishness. Marxist socialists believe that class struggle will end only if the working class controls the means of production. A democratic socialist accept capitalist economies, but believe in public ownership and state intervention in the economy. Marxists advocate for complete control of the economy, while we have democratic socialists who believe in the democratic process. And they also accept private research. So, now that I've differentiated those two, we really need to stop using the bullshit talking points about Bernie Sanders being a communist.
Yeah, I mean, because I think I talked about my involvement with the DSA, and this is something that we're always talking about, and or at least, you know, within the community, within the forums, and even there's even a web seminar coming up that I'm going to be a part of, that's looking into how to talk about socialism, because for some reason in this country it's socialist or capitalist, when everybody's ignoring the fact that we're already a little bit socialist. The argument is never really socialist and capitalist, or capitalist, communist, or capitalist. We live in a time period where the communists don't exist, and if they do, they're somewhere in a basement somewhere, and they don't have any power. But the thing, it's not a matter of socialism, capitalism. It's a matter of how much socialism do we have in a capitalistic system. We've already decided that there's police. We've already decided with the firefighters. We've already decided that there's socialism when it comes to schools. And again, it's how much socialism. All Bernie wants to do is add on that. And I might add, it's not like he wants to add automobiles to socialism. He wants to add reasonable things that not only, in most people's opinion, are reasonable, but they have been tested by other countries, like healthcare, like daycare, like parental leave. All of these things, they're not out of the mind. They're not out of comprehension. They're not out of our grasp. I mean, whenever we look at how much wealth we have in this country, I mean, it certainly, in theory, seems possible. And now, if it goes into practice and it's not, then I'll be one of the first people to say maybe we can't afford it.
Well, if I may chime in, here in West Texas, we always hear about wealth redistribution.
Oh yeah,
and it's fucking bullshit, because we already have wealth redistribution. It's going in the wrong direction. We're spending $92 billion a year in corporate subsidies. Yeah. So, we've bailed out Wall Street and we've bailed out corporations plenty of times. I think it's their turn to do the same for us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, it's not saying like it's across the board. I'm not saying like they should be paying for everything. It's unrealistic. And I always see that bullshit talking point. Well, if you tax the rich at 100%, it wouldn't be paying for the same. And first of all, you're already wrong by just making that statement. You're not even saying like which tax bracket by the rich you mean. And see, that's where I just, to hear the talking points that you're highlighting on, I just never can take it, I guess, to heart, or I can't even take it to mind, because it doesn't have any thought put into it at all. It's just what they've heard from Alex Jones. It's what they've heard from, conservative, not commentators, really. I mean, even conservative pundits, I think, to a certain extent, are a little weary of still saying, no, because there's still some economists out on. I mean, there was I forget which famous economist came out and pretty much said, no, Sanders' policies would actually save us money in the long run. That was a very popular test that was done, because he was one of, I want to say he was pretty well known and renowned. But no, I mean, it becomes really bad in places like West Texas, because the people here have lived in a bubble for so long.
That economist you were talking about, his name is Gerald Friedman.
Yeah, and he's saying that they're perfect. All the things he's at least shooting for are perfectly reasonable. And again, as a supporter of him, I understand that possibly we might not get everything he wants. But with Hillary, it's a concession already. She's already conceded to the argument. She's already said, I'm not going to do single payer. I'm going to keep it like it is. And if I do any changes, it's going to be more to the right. But if Bernie gets talked down to, or gets talked to the right from a single payer policy, then we get stuff like the public option, which Obama wanted from the get-go. We still get progress. We still get the policies that save us so much in the long run. And that's my whole thing, is even if you're a moderate Democrat or moderate leftist, I think Bernie's still the guy. I don't think Hillary has no leg to stand on, in my view. It's amazing to me that I mean, to a certain extent, I can understand why she has a lead in some states, because you can never dispel name popularity. She'll always have that. But I would think in some places you would already see Bernie winning favorably. Mm-hmm. And I see a certain amount of pundits that still want to give Hillary New York because she was a senator in New York, which, I mean, New York is more in line with Bernie. Mm-hmm. And if you look at, and even then, that was years ago. Hillary Clinton was the senator years ago. You can't say, I mean, I couldn't even vote last election. I couldn't even vote in the 2008 one. Imagine all of the new voters that come along with this, that are voting for the first time in this one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's completely, I don't understand how these people could give her that without any sort of numbers to back it up.
Okay, so if you missed it last time, Sean DeWitt, he is doing a phone bank for Bernie Sanders, and I am encouraging everybody to go out and do it. It will be extremely helpful. Just get a hold of Julian or I, or you could get ahead with Sean DeWitt himself.
And it's now officially on Bernie Sanders' volunteer site. So if you, again, are signed up with him by email, you will be getting notifications to the event. It's on the 22nd. And it would, if you're in the Odessa area, it will be downtown. Again, that page, your notifications, all of that, they will have the address and the time for that. Also, as well, I've been in contact with the DSA recently, and we are going to start talking about maybe starting a chapter here in Odessa. If anybody's interested, you could message me, message Cameron, get a hold with any of us, because that's one thing we're going to need is members. Personally speaking, I don't even know if we could achieve this, but I figured might as well try it. Might as well try to start something new and getting new ideas out there, and let's just see where it goes.
Yeah, so this is all really exciting. I'm going to go ahead and thank Kyle for hanging in there and allowing us to brainwash him.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you.
All right, guys, and the third episode of the Statist should be coming up pretty soon, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I guess we'll see you next time.